Hello out there in Facebook land. Welcome everyone to this special, extra special Facebook Live. For those of you who don't know me, I am indeed April Verrett, president of SEIU Local 2015. Super excited to be here today to celebrate Women's History Month and the women of our union. We just saw images of amazing, amazing women who without them, we literally would not be here today. As the largest, most powerful, we're the most powerful union in the state of California, powered, I tell you, powered by amazing women. One of them is my co-host for the day, Kim Evon, our executive vice president.
Hey, sister. I'm so excited to be on this Facebook Live event with you, and happy International Women's History Month. And it's great to be here with all of you joining us and wonderful female leaders that we have in our organization and in our state. And we're going to be lifting up and appreciating the role of women in labor, in our communities, and in our leadership. And we are joined today by three incredible women: California State Controller Betty Yee, State Senator Nancy Skinner, and Los Angeles City Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez. So we are excited to have you all here today to celebrate what women have done and what women can do when we lead.
That's right, because when women lead, when women are centered, when we are able to use our voices and our power, we all know that we all do better. And as for the labor movement, like, let's just be real. When most people think about the labor movement, they think about men in hard hats, right? Sometimes you might think about, other folks, but it's usually those traditional Teamsters, carpenters, electricians, right? Good, hearty men's work. And the union has historically been represented in our culture by older men, most of them white. Shh, don't tell anybody. But our union is different. We are proud to be a union that is predominantly women, most of them women of color, and a hell of a lot of us are immigrants. And we do the work of caregiving, the work that was traditionally viewed as women's work and was historically tied to the times of slavery in our country, when Black women were brought to this country to take care of other people's families. And so it's the work that women has always done. And for far too long in our economy, in our country, our work has been dismissed, devalued, and disrespected. But our union is standing up to make a difference. We were founded by women to unite long-term care workers, members in the unions of Legacy Locals 5 to 1, Legacy Local UHW, Legacy Local ULTCW, and Legacy Local COO. Those amazingly courageous women, right, during their time said, we are going to stand up for ourselves and we're going to stand up for the people that we take care of. I am often say, this is not your grandfather's union. We don't look like it, we don't act like it, and we damn sure don't fight like it. And so I know our power comes from our diversity. We are proud to build a 21st century labor movement that is responsive to the entire lives of our members, not just the time they spend at work. But we want to make sure our members lead lives where you aren't just surviving, but you are thriving. We stand in honor of these women that founded our union, who set out to create the conditions for a better long-term care system. And in that long-term care system, workers will be valued.
Yeah, that's so right, April. I just was thinking about one of the women that we saw a picture of, Joyce Hayashi, who is amazing, and I consider a mentor of mine. She reminded us, like, short 8 years ago, that our local was indeed the largest local of women, an organization of women, and what kind of power and responsibility we have to advance dignity for women and all working people. And I just know that this is a moment for us to really start to change the course of history, women and leaders that are women have long been overlooked and undervalued by far too many and far too many decision makers. And we've got to continue to fight to center them in the conversations that promote not just better care systems, but healthier communities. And I just want to invite people who are watching in the chat, the name of a woman that you want to honor in this moment, to share with each other who's had a real impact on you. And I often think of a great saying, you have a seat at the table or you're going to find yourself on the menu. And women and people of color need to be at a seat in every room where decisions are made. Because we know that the contributions women make, we make collectively to our communities and the country and across the globe, promote healing, unity, and positive change for everyone. And that's what we're striving to do as a union.
That's right. I also want to, at this moment, lift up an amazing woman leader in our country. And it is the member of the House in Georgia. Her name is Park Cannon. And I want us all to lift up Park and stand in solidarity with her. Because sisters and brothers, we are living in an age in the year 2021 where our democracy is under attack. The very fundamental cornerstone of our democracy, the right to vote, is being threatened once again, particularly the right of people that look like me is being threatened in Georgia. And Park Cannon was courageous enough. She wanted to look that Governor Kemp in the eye while he took away so much that went into making it possible for there to be a majority in the Senate that is actually standing on the side of working people. She wanted to look him in the face as he wiped away all of the progress that has been made. And the audacity to not even allow her to knock at the door of power. And so I have just been holding that for the last couple of days. And so I just wanted to say that. Let us lift up Park Cannon and Park, we stand in solidarity with you, and we are not going to let this injustice happen. So I think we want to bring in our guests and allow them to get into this conversation. So thrilled to have these three amazing, powerful women leaders from across our state with us. And so first, Betty, let's go to you. Just any reactions, reflections on the time that we're in?
Absolutely. So first, hello, sisters. Good morning. It is really a wonderful way to celebrate Women's History Month. And first, let me just say to SEIU 2015, April and Kim, thank you for your leadership. This is really our moment. When I think about what we've all experienced this past year with the COVID crisis and how important the work all of you are doing is to families, to our communities. And yet we know that we have a lot more work to do to be sure that we are elevating your voice in terms of just being sure that we are valuing what you're doing. And so I'm really happy to see the rise of unions again. I'll just say as a point of reference, we saw over the last 40 some odd years, our economy, and everything I do at work as your controller is through the lens of the economy, but we have seen productivity shoot through the roof, and yet wages and compensation stay really flat. And so that coincides, by the way, with the de-escalation of the voices of unions and so many attempts to try to silence the voices of unions. But I'm actually happy to see unions on the rise again, and more excited to see the role of women in playing, that women are playing in that rise. And so for all people to be heard and to truly understand the importance of fair working conditions, we need women at the forefront. Your voices are important. And by the way, Kim, yes, we need to have a seat at the table. And there's still attempts to kind of keep us away from the table. We're just going to bring our own chair and pull ourselves right up.
Love it. Love it.
That's exactly right, because our great Shiro Shirley Chisholm said, bring your own damn folks.
That's right.
That's right. She sure did. Senator Skinner, what's on your mind?
Well, April and Kim, thank you for doing this. And just thank you, 2015, because what you are demonstrating is the value of and I say of women's domestic labor. And I mean, thank God that we have organized women who are then, we have the hope of moving you to a position of being paid your value, what you are worth, with your full benefits and with your rights and with dignity. Because when we look at domestic labor, which is primarily women's work, and I'm not talking now just that work which is compensated. So I'm also talking because in many, for the longest time in our country, we wouldn't even compensate long-term care workers, right? We just assumed that a woman in the home was going to do it. So now we've shifted, and we first shifted in a way that still did not compensate adequately, but it was the organizing of 2015 and others that put women and you in a position to finally start the path of really decent pay and decent work. But if we put a value on the unpaid domestic labor of women in the US, it is like $26 trillion. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just kudos, and thank you for pointing out Park Hannon. Such an important act she did, and disgusting that they would cart her away. But the very fact that they did has got to force people to confront that this this stripping away of people's voting rights, in the same way as my colleague Betty Yee mentioned, the stripping away of workers' right to organize, they are part and parcel. They are together. And it is to allow the corporate class and the 1% to continue to control and to leave it where the productivity of workers increases, and yet we are not adequately paid. And just what else we have been seeing too much in this country. So kudos, and happy Women's History Month.
Great. Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, you look like you got something to tell us. Bring it.
Well, first of all, ladies, I want to let you know how honored I am to be joining you all on this really special occasion that really uplifts and celebrates women leadership. Senator Skinner, Betty Yee are just outstanding leaders in their own right. Obviously, April, you and Kim, the work that you do. When you mentioned, this isn't your grandfather's labor movement. I never saw it as my grandfather's labor movement, because it was the women that helped uplift this labor movement. It was the Dolores Huertas. It was the April Verretts. It was the Maria Elena Durazos. That's what got this labor movement moving. And so we always have historically undervalued the work of women in every role, because let's not get it twisted. It is the women that have helped move these movements forward and continue to. We saw it in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. So, we have historically been undervalued, whether it's with the household work. When you look at what women have been undervalued for those that have been those caretakers, and then formally providing the care for the elderly, for our disabled, as so many of the members do in 2015, managing not just their households, but the households of those that they care for. It has always been our role to be the caretakers of others, to be advancing our movements. And it's just high time that we now get recognized for it. And so I couldn't be more proud to join you ladies. For me, it's about making sure that we continue to uplift and celebrate the contributions that each of us makes in our respective roles. I'm proud that in my own office, because, you mentioned Shirley Chisholm, and I use this all the time. It's like, yes, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, in my office, we didn't need folding chairs. 80% of my office is led by women. 100% of my leadership team is women. And that is with intention, because we need to continue to uplift and create that space and opportunity for women to grow in their leadership roles. And that's what we are all collectively here to celebrate. I'm so proud to have been able to partner with members of 2015 to help get to the root needs of the members of our community through the struggle in this pandemic. And we still have a lot of work to do, but I couldn't be more proud to be partnered up with you all. to help continue to make that change and make those waves here in California.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank all of you all. I know that we all get to work, closely on different initiatives. And I just love what you said, Councilmember Rodriguez, about making the space for women, right? Because if we don't elevate and support and encourage women to lead, who in the hell will?
Yeah.
Women rise in the ranks, and more of us are taking positions of real leadership with real power, right? I mean, you can't just put us in the position without giving us the power. We are beginning to shape policy and make changes in our government. So super proud of what our sister, our Californian sister, our MVP, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris is helping to do in Washington, D.C. We celebrate the American Rescue Plan. It is one of the most progressive packages that has passed in our country's history. $1.9 trillion. A great deal is due to the inclusion of women, and some of the most impactful legislation will put money in the pockets of American families that need it the most. I know a lot of these $1,400 stimulus checks have already hit people's bank accounts.
Yeah.
Paid leave for 100 million workers in our country, super, super important as we continue to battle the COVID pandemic. Over $30 billion in housing assistance. You cannot talk about this crisis. You can't talk about California and the needs of our state without talking about housing. So knowing that there are resources coming to assist with the housing crisis. And $40 billion to expand quality, affordable childcare, right? More women have lost jobs, had to leave work during this pandemic than at any time in our history. And it's largely because children have needed to be cared for. Putting money into affordable childcare is incredibly important to support women and families, but to get our economy back on the road to health. And all of this has happened because women have centered our activism, we've lifted our voices, and we've made sure that we are not moving from the front of the line. And I just want to share one more thing before we hear from others. We heard this week, the president is now starting to talk about a $3 trillion investment in infrastructure, right? So our country is going to start talking about what does infrastructure look like. I'm here to tell you, we are demanding that the care infrastructure, that care jobs, that women's work is part of the investment that this country makes in our infrastructure. Having someone to take care of your child or to make sure your parents and loved ones are safe in their older years, that is just as important to this country as a road and a bridge. And so we will not allow this $3 trillion investment just to go to those hard hat jobs, right? We also need part of that $3 trillion to go to care jobs. Yes. Kim?
Yeah, I was just, I'm like, yes. And looking at some of the comments off on the side, and our sister Barbara Bondurant, I think in reaction to us talking about a seat at the table, she's like, bring a different table, bring your own table. And I feel like I just want to yay, Barbara. Never mind the chair. We're gonna set up our own table. I think it speaks a lot to. I want to lift up the courage and the tenacity of our members here in California, not local and across the country, home care workers and nursing home workers who made it a priority, a national priority in dialogue even before the election for every candidate to center care as a discussion. To your point, April, it's about time. Infrastructure is about that and not just roads and bridges. And I just want to lift up, some few things. It's like we are creating our own table. The 117th Congress had a record now total of 141 women, which represents about 26% of its membership, and a record 51 women of color. We know we can do better, and we have to do more to get more voices and perspectives of women in how we govern and lead. And also women of color are the most influential voting bloc, and they have really critical perspectives about the role of government, community, and equity that embodies, for me, the notions of what a true democratic society should be. And we saw this fall, we've lifted up Stacey Abrams and her leadership, but we also saw this fall the women brought victories across the country, from Georgia to here in California, and the work our members did in contributing to that. And we've seen women come together and rally around progressive leadership and causes. And we have to thank them for the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Back to you, April, on sort of like women-centered priorities. And they made those phone calls and they got out the vote. And they're the ones making sure that we center our families, our children, our communities as priorities to this country. So I'm just super proud, and I want to be part of the new table that's being set up, Barbara Bondurant. So I'm with you, sister.
Kim, I just saw Miss Carmen put in the chat, we are the table. I know that's so please, Betty, Nancy, in here, let's have a conversation.
Absolutely. No, so Kim and April, I mean, I love this idea of we are the table, because frankly, we don't have to measure up to anybody else's, table, right? And so we're just going to pull up because we have a lot to bring to the table. So that I love that. But, in terms of the contributions of women, look, I just have to say, through the work that I do, I mean, I just care a lot about our economy and being sure that it's an economy that works for everyone. And obviously the work that all of you do, SEIU 2015, the care work is so foundational to being able to have an economy that works for all. And which means you have to be valued, your work has to be valued. We need to pay you for what you're worth and what your work is worth. But you're also allowing others to fully participate in the economy. I mean, there's this really, kind of multiplying effect here. So we need to deal with that. But I want to lift up another woman because she has fought for this for over a decade, and that is Rosa Delorio from Connecticut, because in that $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, we finally have an ability to deal with child poverty. And we know that we're trying to eliminate working poverty here in California, because 45% of workers working multiple jobs still are not making enough to put food on the table, to really care for their families. And so what Rosa Delorio, what Delorio did was say, look, hey, we have this child tax credit, which has been, it started out really kind of a measly amount, $500 per child annually, that you can claim on your tax bill, but it wasn't refundable. So only middle-class families and higher got to take advantage of it. Then it got raised to $2,000 per child per year. And you couldn't even put all that in your pocket. Maybe I think about $1,600 or so went back into your pocket. But in this stimulus plan, the American Rescue Act, we have $3,600 for children up to 6 years old, $3,000 for children, each child up to 17 years old, being able to be claimed on a tax return, and it is refundable, which means it is going to go into the pockets of low-income working families. And so this has every ability to lift our families, our working families, out of poverty. And I'll just say this, because we're all celebrating this stimulus plan. This is relief that has been centered around the COVID crisis. Relief is not a permanent solution. These measures can be taken away next year, and we just need to be sure that our activism continues and that we are lobbying the heck out of our members in Washington to be sure that this is a permanent source of assistance and relief, because it will help stabilize our households, stabilize our families, really lift, like I said, our children and families out of poverty. And so, and what I love about it is that it's hopeful. We can do this, sisters, because we have seen a tremendous amount of support from all of our communities across the United States, and know that women, the growing block of voters across this country, the growing block of who elevated their voices through calls and postcards and everything else to get this legislation passed. And even though we've had so many losses and setbacks for women during this pandemic, I just feel very, very hopeful that in terms of how we're going to reshape this economy, and yes, infrastructure includes human infrastructure and the human infrastructure of care work, I am just so hopeful that we are going to see finally an economy that works for everyone.
April and Kim, Betty, all of your comments, Monica, all of your comments so far, so spot on. And the this issue of the upcoming investment in infrastructure. April, thank you for pointing out that infrastructure is not just bridges and roads. It's not just buildings. It is people. And if we cannot support the improvement of bridges and roads and buildings if we are not supporting the people. And so this, now there's this talk about caring economy, and that's fine with me. I'm happy to hear it, but I don't want to find that the use of the term somehow minimizes its importance or value because it becomes equated then with women's work. Because too often we see that once it's associated with women's work, it is not valued, it is not invested in, it is not respected as well. But we know that it is the foundation, it is the fundamental core of the ability for any of the other work to get done. So unless children have somewhere to be when a family goes to work, whether it's the man or the woman, then they cannot go to work, right? So we know. So I'm glad that we are talking about that investment in care economy. But I would like to get, and I know you're all working on it. I want us to have some concrete proposals for what those investments should be. And now I'll put on my hat as chair of the Senate Budget Committee, State Senate, and also the vice chair of the Women's Caucus. And as Ben's pointed out, this pandemic created a she session. It is women who lost their jobs. It is women who left the workforce. And we don't know how many of those jobs are even going to come back. So the hit economically on women is going to be severe, potentially for decades. And we have to address it. And the stimulus so far has been incredible, as Betty pointed out, for the credit for children and all. But the inability to get the $15 an hour wage increase, because who mostly has low wage jobs? Women. So we got to get that minimum wage up. And then we have to start looking at what are these specific investments. And I invite 2015 and everyone who's listening in this, watching this Facebook Live, to give us, meaning the state, Senate, me as the Budget Committee Chair, and the Women's Caucus, give us some concrete things that we can do. California right now, what a weird, what a just irony is we have more money than we've ever had because of that hot stock market and because some people made so much money. And however, we have high unemployment and more poverty than ever, and women without work. So what are the investments that we need to make with this wealth that we have all of a sudden to lift people up and to really create a pathway so that women and children aren't in poverty? And I welcome those ideas because we of course, the Women's Caucus, we have always historically made the investments in early care and education, our child care, both the wages to our child care workers and the cost for our families. That has always been our priority. But what else should we be looking at right now? And I invite your suggestions and proposals.
So Nancy, you have a few people, one saying pass the Equal Pay Act, and you were talking about that earlier. Barbara and Adriana De Pena and others, housing for all. Like, here's a couple of suggestions coming right at you in the chat, giving you direct feedback. So thank you for those comments, y'all.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that we have to have a conversation about our values in this moment. What do we care about the most? And how do we allow our values to help us make choices about how we use these resources? That it's a once in a generation opportunity, I think, to invest in root causes, right? We look at the mental health crisis in our state. We look at the housing and the homelessness crisis in our state. We look at the education crisis where still far too many of our children aren't getting what they need. I know, Councilwoman, you are a big champion around youth development and making sure our communities are places where youth have what they need to survive. We need to invest in the things that create the conditions for thriving in our state. In my humble opinion, how are we really using this as an investment so that we don't continue to have the same crisis going forward?
Well, you teed me up perfect, April, because you know this is my bag right here. And Senator Skinner, I was going to say, I got an idea for you. You know, as Betty mentioned, right now we're talking about one-time investments, and that we aren't going to likely see the sustainable investments at this level. I've been someone who has been critical of, you know, in the wake of what we saw in the aftermath of George Floyd, you had a lot of infusion of resources and everybody reimagining everything. But what we need is systemic change. We have to remember we're still operating on rules that we did not create among people that did not look like us, that did not live our experience.
Right.
And so we have to be in the position and be bold in changing that systemically for our communities, because we have not addressed the root causes that have contributed to all of these circumstances that we're experiencing right now. Whether you talk about the endless cycles of poverty, whether you talk about, you know, for me, you know, the greatest economic recovery tool that we have is equitable universal childcare. Because if we're going to get women back into the workforce, we got to make sure that they got a place for their babies to be cared for in a manner in which they feel comfortable, that they feel confident and are supported. And, you know, many of us, you know, multi-generational households have had the benefit of having family members that have been, and look, I'm a party to that. You know, I had my mom, my stay-at-home mom, who was like fighting for my babies when I was working nonstop, and my mother-in-law who said, I'm going to retire because I want to fight. I want half that time too. But the reality is that many folks don't have that luxury. And we have to create the conditions that enable women to come back into this workforce and be able to stay and elevate themselves and their families. But universal childcare is going to be that great equalizer for a lot of families and ending that systemic cycle of poverty, because they have to make the choice too often between, do I pay for childcare or do I go to work? Because you can't afford to do both. But when we talk about systemic change and what that looks like, I am a huge advocate, as you know, to creating the city's first youth development department. Because we have seen in the city of Los Angeles in the last 10 years, 10 to 25-year-olds make up 32% of arrestees in the city of Los Angeles. You want to talk about public safety issues? Let's talk about investing in youth. Let's talk about giving them the career pathways that will also contribute to ending that cycle of poverty. Because Stanford economists have already reflected that the learning loss that has been experienced in this last year for so many young people is going to result in a net loss of earning capacity of about 6 to 9% over their lifetime. And when you add that on top of the poverty that they're already living in, we're just creating another cycle. And so we have to be intentional with our work at this time to take these resources that, frankly, let's look at it as a huge gifted opportunity for us to do right by it, not just funding one-time solutions, but systemic change, to change the way our formulas and making sure that we measure and we are accountable to doing it right, not just pretending we are. I'm talking about reinventing who we are. And that's the moment that is before all of us. And it's going to take the women coming together to help to lead that. You know, this has been a conversation that the young people of our city have been embarking upon for the last 7 years. I'm just proud to be the person who decided to carry that ball for them. You know, those of us who, you know, I didn't play football, but you know what, I know how to carry that ball, just like so many women do, and we're going to take it to that end zone. We're going to win this one. But this is the work that we have to do, and it's not just here in Los Angeles, but it's really needs to be reflected in and around every part of this great state and across this nation, because we have to change the systems that have held us back, and this is a critical moment for us to do that.
That's
April,
great.
I just want to lift up a couple of comments in the chat to when both Sister Rodriguez and Skinner were talking, sort of, you know, recognition that the system doesn't work right now for a multicultural society. Another sister lifted up that, you know, a budget is a moral document. It's not just an accounting document. It actually impacts people's lives. So just to this issue around values and getting at the root of what's wrong and fixing it, you had some good reaction in the chat from that.
Yeah. Look, I could talk to you ladies all day, but I know all day, but we have work to do, right? And I just want to acknowledge and thank you all again so much for spending this time with us. I know you all are busy, but this really, really means a lot. And this is not the end of the conversation. This is an ongoing conversation, because I know that 2015 has champions, has partners, co-conspirators in all of you. And I would be remiss if I don't lift up a few other women, right, who helped make this all possible. Of course, our President Pro Tem, the great Toni Atkins, who partners with Senator Skinner in our state Senate. And of course, Council President Nuri Martinez, who our council member partners with in the Los Angeles City Council, and Betty is holding it down as one of our statewide elected officers. So proud of the work that you do as our comptroller, and the 5 women who lead the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, right? I talk about that every chance I get. We have wonderful mayors, and Mayor Reed in San Francisco, Mayor Schaaf in Oakland, so many other amazing champions who are committed to we are. And I just want to end. We need systemic change. I think Councilmember Rodriguez said it best. We have for the last year talked so much about what doesn't work in our country and that we are not going to go back to the status quo. Well, they say that insanity is doing something the same way over and over again and expecting to get different results. We cannot continue to do the same things over and over again and expect to get different results. We got to rebuild, we got to strengthen, we got to transform our state until it truly becomes a California for all of us. And I think with women leading the way, we'll get it done. Thanks, everybody. This was one of our best Facebook Lives yet.
We can do it. We can do it.
We can do it. We can absolutely do it. Love and hugs.
Bye.